Mhm. Welcome, everyone. My name is Elian Ramos, and I'm your host. Our topic today is voting rights. Last week marked the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, which is considered the biggest achievement of the civil rights movement and one of the hallmarks of American democracy. The law has afforded Latinos and African American communities unprecedented gains in electoral power. Like other electoral laws, however, this one has become very politicized. Since the 2010 election, we are seeing an escalation in efforts to restrict voting access under the guise of preventing fraud. Over the past couple of years, for example, a series of rules, bills, and restrictive voting rights practices have either been introduced or enacted in as many as 41 states across the country. And as we speak, with the presidential election race underway, the state legislatures are already considering hundreds of laws that could determine access to the ballot, which means that we should all be paying very close attention to all of this. So today, I have invited a group of experts that can help us understand these restrictions and how they can potentially impact the elections next year. We're also going to be hearing about some of the efforts underway to defend our community's right to vote. So let me introduce my friends here. First up, I have Maria Samaniego, who is the Programs Director for Voto Latino. How are you, Maria?
Sorry, I was mute there. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, not a problem. This is a live show, so anything can happen. Next up, I have Sarah Librusk, who is the Vice President at the Latino Victory Fund. How are you, Sarah?
Hi, Elian. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And we're going to be joined in a little bit by Camila Gallardo, who is the Associate Director of Communications for NCLR. She's going to be joining in a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, I urge you to join this conversation following the hashtag LatinosVote. So let's start, girls. How are you? This is a full girl house today.
Woo!
Women power. So let's start with, tell me a little bit about what the work that you do and that your organizations do. And you can jump in, whoever wants to start.
Well, at Latino Victory Project, we are working to build power in the Latino community by adding a greater Latino voice to the policies that are changing our country. A lot of our work is centered on the theory that bringing more Latinos as candidates on the ballot will bring out Latinos on election day. So we work to increase getting a pipeline of Latino candidates, and we provide like tactical, technical support for them, but we know that this is can't be done without any finances. So we build a network of Latino donors that can provide financial support and our other activities around Latino voter engagement.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And Maria?
Yeah, great. So some of the work that we do at Voto Latino, our main mission is to engage Latino millennials in the political process. So we want young Latinos to be informed and be engaged and find information where they are, which is online. So we use a lot of social media to reach out and give them more information on the issues. And we also are on the ground. We give them opportunities to come out to conferences and conversations and just speak about the issues that are important to them and to learn more skills so that they can better themselves and better their community.
Great work that you do, and thank you for clarifying what it is, because I know that you guys, all of you, are very popular online, and so, but I know that some people may not be very aware of the work that goes on behind the little avatars, right, that we have online. So let's go to the topic at hand here. I said it in the introduction. There's been so much going on around the voting rights in general. But let's start with something that people may not be too aware. I think that we take voting rights for granted, but there is something called the Voting Rights Act. And so let's start with that. What does the Voting Rights Act do, and why should people like me care about this law?
So I guess I'll jump in really quick.
Go ahead.
The Voting Rights Act was passed at the height of the civil rights movement, and there was a lot of issues going on in the African American community restricting their ability to register to vote. So this act was passed in an effort to ban racial discrimination at all levels. the great thing about it is that it's not only just for racial discrimination, it's to create opportunities for all people to vote. In 1975, the amendment allowed language minorities to have the ability to vote, and that gave us the ability to have Spanish ballots and ballots in different languages. So it's basically giving everyone the opportunity to vote.
Do you want to add anything to that, Sarah?
Yes, and just that it's been a big help in voter protections as it has monitored states and counties that have, or districts that have historically excluded voters. And so when we talk about it initially being enacted to help the black vote, now we've seen that it's really helping a lot of different minority groups, in addition to groups that maybe were unintended. Some of our youngest voters, voters with disabilities, as well as older voters. Without the power of the Voting Rights Act is seen more in the pieces that have been taken away. And you see that when we don't have the monitors on some of these kind of historically exclusionary areas, that the kind of new voter laws that are enacted, you can see where they really are discriminatory.
Nice. So let me make a little parenthesis here and introduce our other guest who just joined. I'm going to unmute you here really quick. Or can you unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Great. Camila Gallardo, who is the Associate Director of Communications for NCLR. How are you, Camila? Thank you.
Hi, good, thank you, and I apologize for being late. I was having some technical difficulties.
Oh, it's okay. It's not your fault, honey. Don't worry. Thank you for being here, though.
Thank you.
So you came right on time because we are talking about, we're kind of introducing the topic, as you know, that our community may not be very aware about what the voting rights is or what it does. And so Maria and Sarah were very kind to explain, give us kind of a background about it. So I'm going to have you jump right in. You know,
sure.
We've been talking about the fact that there's a lot of discriminatory bills and laws that are being introduced and enacted around the country. What are some of these, what kind of discriminations are happening in terms of voting, and how does the Voting Rights Act protect them or prevent them from being enacted?
Well, I think I'm actually in a very interesting state for this discussion. In Florida, we've had quite a history of issues with changes to our voting laws, and I believe we have 5 protected counties that were protected under the Voting Rights Act that had to have any electoral laws screened by the Department of Justice, which unfortunately, since we don't have a complete VRA anymore, there's no watchdog, so to speak, over that. But in Florida, I mean, we've had bills introduced, but we've also had a lot of, I guess you would say, more subtle, although they're not so subtle for minority communities. But laws basically that have restricted voting period. For example, in Florida, they cut the early vote period, which is a period where Latinos and the black community vote very heavily. They cut that period from 10 to 5 days. They also made it more difficult to change your address. As you know, Florida's had a high incidence of folks losing their homes, so a lot of people have been mobile. Before, you used to be able to change your address at the poll, and now you can no longer do that. So a lot of people don't have that information. They go to vote and they're not able to. I think at one point they eliminated the Sunday right before the election as a day to vote, and that, I believe, back in 2008, I think it was 33% of the black community and about 30% of the Latino community actually voted on that day. So there have been, as I said, they're not so subtle to us, but on the exterior they might seem like subtle changes, but they really do affect Latino and minority turnout overall.
Mm-hmm. So let me bring it back to the group. And any of you can jump in here. So we've been talking about the restrictions, but in the bigger picture, what is it that these restrictions do? What are the consequences of people not being able to vote?
I think it's having the intended consequence of just making voting less accessible. And while it's targeting certain groups, that's one effect, but also it's making people confused. New laws are being enacted very close to election days, different voter restrictions, ID laws, things like that are getting thrown at. So even in places where perhaps they don't have certain laws in place, people are confused and they're just not voting.
And you bring up a great point. I read a study that in 2014, the U.S. Government Accountability Office, sorry, here. They did a study with Kansas and Tennessee, and it came out that 2 to 3%, there's a 2 to 3% reduction in voter turnout with their new voter ID laws. And there was also a reduction in 18 to 23-year-olds. So it's just an example of some of these laws that are being enacted can have greater effects on the people.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I wanted to point out also that in Florida, we've had problems with third-party voter registration groups like NCL.
1 second, guys. I'm going to close. Another window to have open, please. And just leave this window open. Sometimes we get. All right. So go ahead.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was going to say that they've enacted several levels of bureaucracy for nonpartisan voter registration groups to work. And the folks that actually go out into the knock on doors and register voters that otherwise wouldn't know where to turn or confused about the process. So that's yet another way of trying to limit participation.
Good. Well, now it seems to have. No. Okay. It's very annoying, isn't it? But okay, so let's continue. Going into the election. How can these restrictions affect the elections? What are the consequences coming up in the elections?
Well, it's a very scary scenario because this would be the first time in 50 years in a presidential election that we don't have the full protections of the Voting Rights Act. So just as Maria and Camila have mentioned, this could manifest in lots of ways, making it harder to register or making no early same-day registration available, making fewer polling places available to areas that are concentrated with minorities or younger people. The ID restrictions, that one has been a particularly current topic because one of the rules that Texas tried to enact was about government-issued photo IDs, which it's very hard to get, and it affects minorities specifically. So we're seeing more and more cases of new laws cropping up after the VRA was stripped, and more states, I think, will start to show these laws cropping up closer to the election day if we don't have any resolution on the existing VRA.
I apologize for all of this craziness going on. But you mentioned all of these events. Are these isolated events, or is there something bigger going on here? Why is it that they're trying to stop people from voting?
I'm sorry, if I heard the question right, you said why were they trying to stop folks from voting?
Yeah, the question is why are they trying to stop people from voting in general? I don't understand why. Whether these are isolated events or this is something bigger going on.
No, I think clearly there's a strategy behind all of this, and it's a national strategy. And part of it was to start the enacting of these laws. I think several years ago is when we started to see an uptick. At the state level, and then obviously it's bringing this case before the Supreme Court that resulted in us not having this section of the VRA that tells us the formula of how do we get to the protected counties. So clearly somebody, or some people have an agenda of sorts of who they want to turn out to the polls, and clearly they want those folks that favor their positions on all of these policy issues to be the ones to turn out, and clearly those are not minority voters, which is unfortunate. So I think just looking at it, there's no way you could say that these are isolated incidents. It seems like it's too many of them. I think over 35, the last time we saw over 35 states that have introduced some kind of measure that restricts voting rights.
Now I'm going to show a map that I got from the Brennan Center that shows exactly how many states. There's been 41 states have introduced restrictive laws. 34 states have introduced photo ID laws, and so on and so forth. So we see that this is something systematic that is going on, in terms of into cutting early voting periods, in terms of asking for proof of citizenship, and putting all of these barriers around the act of voting. So is this legal? Can anything be done to prevent these laws from being enacted?
I think something that's important to note is that right after the court case that was mentioned, there's 5 states that pushed legislation within 24 hours, and 4 out of the 5 states were states with either the highest Latino populations, or one of the highest Latino populations, or fastest growing Latino populations. And to go along with your question on whether or not there could be something done about it, there's currently the Voting Rights Amendment of 2015 that will help bring some of those, some of the bulk back into Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act that will create pre-clearance again for these states with a history of voter discrimination laws, so that they would have oversight prior to passing these laws that could potentially hurt voting within minority communities.
Mm-hmm. And who is working on these Voting Rights Act amendment?
It's currently in Congress, and I think that's something that we need to pay attention to, that if we want our voting rights to be protected, that's something that we can lobby to our congressional members, that we want them to support the Voting Rights Act of 2015.
Mm-hmm. What are other initiatives that are being implemented by other your organization or other organizations out there to also support and protect voting rights?
I mean, I think, as Maria had mentioned, Congress is the key to this, because without a redraft of that section of the VRA, we're really nowhere. I mean, I know that one of the last bills I saw that was introduced has garnered, somewhat of bipartisan support, but we're not quite there. But I think on the organizational level, what we need to do is to obviously reach out and make folks aware of what the voting rights laws are as they are today within their particular community, so that they can be prepared for the information. For example, if you can't change your address on voting day, we got to get, in Florida, we need to get folks aware of the fact that they have to do this ahead of time, prepare themselves. I think pushing voter registration, obviously the more we expand our electorate, the better off we are, but certainly information campaign, and I'm certain the other organizations are involved in similar efforts as well.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, what kind of things is your organization doing?
We're taking a little bit of a different approach. We think that the vote should be considered a First Amendment right, and once you have that lined up, it will be harder to kind of eat away at it, as we've seen with different states and districts. So we're working to really put in the research and the writing around getting that point to stick around your vote as your voice, and having that protected around the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm. And Maria?
And what Camila mentioned, definitely information is key. And through Voto Latino, we're looking to launch an election center through our website coming this fall that will provide people information on how they can register to vote, if there's any changes in their areas, and what they need to have before they head to polling locations, so that they can be prepared Additionally, we're having conversations throughout the country. We'll be in North Carolina, which has been huge within this discussion of voting rights. We'll be there in September, talking to Latino millennials about what's going on around them and things that they can do to increase information to their peers and to their families. And also we'll be in Northern California at the end of October, also having conversations of Latinos looking forward to the 2016 election.
Mm-hmm. Very important because, in terms of tackling this problem, the youth is going to be key as well. There's been a lot of discussion around college IDs not being accepted and all of that. So getting the youth informed is definitely a key part of organizing all of these.
Yeah, that's a really good point you made, because I know that we've gotten a lot of inquiries in the past or issues that have been brought up by college students because they are mobile and they're moving back and forth, and they might not necessarily be registered where they're attending college, along with veterans as well. So those are two groups that will definitely benefit from some kind of outreach and informational campaign.
Mm-hmm. But definitely, and so since we're in the topic of prevention and kind of taking action against these restrictions or these proposed restrictions, what are some of the things that you recommend people that they can do to make sure that they don't lose their voting rights or that they should be aware of?
I think that what you can do right now is talk to your president, talk to your congressperson, and keep yourself informed. I mean, I'm sure that with partners, we're going to be making sure that people have the right information so that they can get out and get out the vote. And so that is your most powerful tool.
I agree with Sarah, and I think now is a particularly good time since we are in the midst of Republican presidential debates and people are being asked, their very specific positions on these types of issues, for us to make it an issue with our elected congresspersons and those who are seeking to be in the highest office.
Well, right now, none of them have been addressing this. None of the candidates, with the exception of Hillary Clinton, actually, is the only one that has mentioned anything like this. But I haven't heard of any of the other candidates stating their position on this. Maria, what would be your recommendation?
I think absolutely stay informed, talk to your congressional member, but also if you see anything that's questionable, report it. If you have questions on how to report it, we do have a hotline. You can find it on our website, votolatino.org, or reach out to other local organizations that can provide that information for you.
Wonderful. And so I want to give you the opportunity before we go to tell people where they can find you and how they can support the efforts that you're doing. So let's go down the line. Camila, you want to start?
Yes, certainly. You can visit us at www.nclr.org. Actually, next month we're launching a brand new website that is much more user-friendly than our current version, but all the information, the pertinent information of how to get a hold of us. We also have a listing within our website of our close to 300 affiliate organizations throughout the country, which cover all the states in the U.S. So, if it's not calling us directly, certainly look on our site. We have a state map. You can click there and find out which local organizations you can reach out to.
Maria?
Sure, you can find us at www.votolatino.org, also through social media, Twitter at Votolatino. You can also find us at vlpowersummit.com, where you can find more information about when we're going to be on the ground near you.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to be doing the voter effort this year again, Maria, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're launching a campaign for Hispanic Heritage Month, where we're inviting folks to join us and get out the vote, get people registered, and start early. We need to start now to get ready for 2016.
Beautiful. And Sarah? Hi, we are at www.latinovictory.us, and we've also started a recent hashtag so we can hear from you. It's hashtag #LatinosListen. So if there's some subject you think we should know more about or something you want to talk about, including the Voting Rights Act and how it's affecting you, please use it. Happy to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. And I urge you to please follow these organizations. They're doing amazing work on the ground. They have plenty of information about the voting rights and how you can get involved to help ensure that our rights are protected. And please follow them on Twitter as well at NCLR, at Voto Latino, and at Latino Victory US. I will urge you to let's continue this conversation online. Let's continue using the hashtag Latinos Votes because this is such an important conversation, and we need to be bringing this to the forefront, particularly with the candidates that are running for president right now. And they need to tell us what they're planning to do to ensure that everybody has the right to vote, which is a constitutional right, by the way. So let's continue the conversation online. I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much, guys, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.